Welcome to Troubleshooting Innovation, a commercial baking podcast, sponsored by Bundy Baking Solutions, setting the industry standard for baking pan design, performance, and service for more than 60 years. I'm your host, Joanie Spencer, Editor-in-Chief of Commercial Baking. This season, I'm spending 5 weeks with Dale Easdon, President and CEO of Klosterman Baking Company, to discover how this leader is carrying a legacy name into the industry's future. In this episode, Dale and I explore the key tenets of operational excellence in bakery manufacturing. Hi, Dale. Thank you so much for coming back this week.
My pleasure. Yeah, looking forward to it.
So this is a really good episode because it's going to be of interest to our readers and something where you have a lot of experience. So I'm excited to dive into this with you. You have a very strong reputation as a leader, which we've discovered in the past 2 episodes, but you're also known for your operational focus. I've noticed that you use words like operational excellence, of course, operational compliance, best in class, world-class processes. How do you personally translate these from concept into practice or into action?
Yeah, there's been a lot of different buzzwords used over the years and a lot of different phases. And one of the larger transformations that's happened over the past 20 years is a stronger focus on lean manufacturing. And you'll hear a lot of, around Six Sigma. And Six Sigma it's an excellent tool, strong data analytics that help you steer the ship and get into root cause. But I try to keep it a little simpler, more following the lean principles. And I had the pleasure of spending time with Porsche in Germany. When I was at Lufthansa, we worked with Porsche consultants. So I went to the Porsche Academy to take automotive principles into food manufacturing. And at that time, it was putting meals on aircrafts. And the way that automotive thinks about it and to how we think about it in the food industry. And then when you take it into the baking industry, there's very similar correlations as you do that. Of course, the big difference is when you've got a conveyor belt in Porsche and a car coming off every 5 minutes, and the average selling price is 100,000 euros, then it's a little bit different focus than the average selling price of 10 cents per bun. So you've just got to make sure that you keep it grounded. One of the first things we do, and I've always done, and we did it here as well, is disc profiling. So we put all of our leaders through a disc profile, and I don't know if you've experienced taking a disc profile, but it takes 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very simple tool. But what it actually starts to do is it breaks the group into what we call a wheel. And it's a disc wheel, D, I, S, and C. So D is dominance. We all know those leaders. And just to be transparent, I'm D and I. So I'm right down the middle of D and I.
Okay.
But D is a group that are going to remove barriers and get things done. Just don't get in the way. They're going to take care of it. Sometimes I might get to the end of the journey and not look back to see whether anybody made it with them or they just got it done. So we start to look at the Ds, and you do need them in the group because when you're trying to get task orientated, Ds tend to really run in with it and say, I'll take this. And then we have I for influence, and they're generally really good communicators. And you really need to make sure you've got the right people in the wheel. And then steadiness for S, and really those are typically strong team players, result-orientated, data to get things done. And then there's conscientious, and they really are the ones that look for information specialists. So the reason I explain it is I want to make sure that the wheel has enough leaders in all of those areas. And we identify quickly the gaps. And then as we start recruiting new subject matter expertise, if we find, for example, that we've got a gap, we will then ask a recruiter, and we typically use a group out of London to help us with it, but to basically help recruit and see if we can find individuals with these strengths so that we build up the whole team. So that's kind of step one. Step two for us then is what we call clean, clear, and organized, and basically back to basics and get everything clean, organized. We start with the offices, the break rooms, then we work our way down to the floor, get all the hallways cleared, etc. So there's a strong correlation to clean, clear, and organized, visual management, and reduction in injuries, because obviously it becomes a safer process when you're not storing surplus equipment. So it's a real simple back to basics transformation. And by the end of year one, we're starting to develop some really strong KPIs. And then we're teaching the leadership KPI management. And a lot of our leaders, and especially in the baking industry, the main indicator for them is fulfillment. Just, let's get the product out to the customer.
Right.
But nobody's actually popping in to say, yes, are we getting it out at the right price and the right margin? And what is our fulfillment? What is our wastage? It's more of a celebration of just fulfillment. That transformation for us is very, very important. And then, of course, we build our vision, which we call the House of Excellence. And the House of Excellence we share that across the whole company. So we can imagine, if you look at the visual of a house, you cannot build a house without a very strong foundation.
Exactly.
So in our 3-year vision and a 3-year strategy, the foundation, the very first brick that we call it is values and culture. What do we stand for around here? What are our values? What are our culture? And that becomes very important. We talk about how we treat each other, dignity, respect, and making sure that's there. The second brick on that foundation is high performance leadership, and really making sure that leaders know what they're responsible and accountable for as we start that training. Food safety and compliance is the next layer. And then for us is preventative maintenance and sanitation excellence. So that's the foundation. And we say, if we've got that right, we can start to build the house. And then we have the pillars. So we have a Lean Six Sigma principles. Second pillar is demand planning and labor materials. Third is customer fulfillment, which is very important to us. And then the fourth, which is project execution. So really, really good project management in 90-day increments. And then on top of that is what we call the House of Excellence. It's really our brand protection becomes the roof. So that's where we started. And I start that way everywhere I go. And then everybody starts to understand the foundation, the principles, and the pillars. And then I teach, and we teach around that, so that we're bringing the leadership up. So it's a bit of a long answer, but there is a science behind that as we start to do it, especially in year one, which we call back to basics. And then year two, raise the bar. And then year three, where we are now, is best in class.
Okay. And so you're in year 3 right now.
We're in year 3 right now. Yes.
Do you feel like you're on track?
We are on track in some areas. We're ahead in others. Further ahead than I anticipated. In some, we're a little slower, and that's common. We always set a 3-year journey. A lot of larger corporate organizations will typically do a 5-year strategy, but we are also, we are owned by private equity, so there's a large ROI expectation in what we do. So we typically focus on a 3-year journey. And I would say overall, we're about 90% there. In the first 3 years, we're now starting to work on what's the next 3 years look like. In year one, we've gone from a 130-year, 4-generation family company to private equity.
Mm-hmm.
So that transformation it can be challenging.
Yeah.
Now, if you look back after 3 years, all of our team are really comfortable around the private equity expectations and the partnership, and we have a great team that we work with. But yes, it's generally about 3 years. So in most areas, we're ahead. The one that I'd like to see, 2 areas actually, I'd like to see more speed. One is rolling out our ERP system, which we are rolling out, but there's just a certain pace that we follow. We also have a system that we launched at the same time called Shop Logic. So when you walk on our manufacturing floor, we have screens that are almost a traffic light system that are telling us if we're on schedule, ahead of schedule, or behind schedule. So these are really strong IT tools where we use iPads for tracking, and you get a live feed So between that and ERP, you just got to be careful you don't overwhelm the business. So I deliberately slowed that down a little bit. So our ERP, we started in warehouse logistics, goods in and scanning. Phase two, which we've started now, is production logistics. And then phase three will be shipping and reconciliation of the shipping. And then that will tie the system together. And then behind the scenes, our AP and AR and collectible is all now done on the new system. So where I'm going with this is you've just got to make sure you can pace the business.
Yeah.
And not have project overload. Then you start to lose some good team members. So I've deliberately slowed down some areas. I mentioned on one of the other episodes, we're a little bit slower getting the new equipment that we need. That's a little frustrating for me, but that's just the cycle time. That's not anything we can control. But I believe there's some bigger benefits to be had once we get the new equipment.
Klosterman is sort of in a very unique spot. Like what you said, you went in the first year, you went from being a 130-year-old family-owned company to private equity. And that is such a really stark transition. So I think it's really interesting that you were able to recognize the pace of change that you need to go so as not to overwhelm everyone. Like, we're going to do everything right now. And now here's the ERP. So I think that that's really worth noting, that a leader has to know when they come into this environment that the bakery is the same, but the environment has drastically changed, to know which area you want at which speed that you're going to change so as not to overload everybody. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and at the same time, we have a business to run. You know, we've got fulfillment, we've got customer demand.
Right.
So going through the change management side, you have to make sure that what you're actually doing, that not only can the customers see the benefit, but the employees can see the need for doing this. So we just got to stay close. Well, the other aspect to it is I have a very clear expectation of all my leadership, and I mean from the top, including myself, that we spend 70% of our time in the business, and 30% are meetings, our weekly sessions, strategic sessions, emails, all that good stuff. But typically, my expectation is 70% of time. So our general manager will be in the bakery 70% of the time. Our senior leaders will be the same. We're in the business, and that's very, very important that we lead from the front. We don't orchestrate from the office.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'm a big believer in servant leadership, so I appreciate that. So could you share with me maybe some examples of operational efficiencies that have been incorporated, and maybe like what are some of the specific KPIs that you've been able to achieve?
Let's take one that I found to be pretty amazing when I walked in. So we have what we call a hog feed, and it's common in the industry. So, you know, if the mix goes wrong, or the yeast isn't right, or the packaging error, whatever that is, that product is donated then to hog feed. And when we started looking at hog feed as total waste, it becomes a real eye-opener that the team can start to see, my goodness, when you put $1 per pound or $1 per ton, because it's significant quantities. Now, the positive is it's not going to landfill, it's going to animal feed. So for me, you know, that's a wonderful thing. At least it's consumed. But I tell my team and advise my team we're not in the business of feeding hogs. We're in the business of making great bread, buns, and donuts. So one of the big initiatives that we rolled out across the whole company is what we call Project Skinny Pig. That's an internal KPI. Our leaders are actually measured against. So Project Skinny Pig, we joke about it, that saying, you know, if you're eating some baking in the Ohio area and think there's not much fat on this baking, what's going on? It's the fact that we're not feeding them. So that was the name we came up with, Project Skinny Pig. And what I can tell you is from starting that, which was year one, In 12 months, we went 140 tons down to 70 tons of total hog feed for the company. And so we have to, just by focusing on it and then focusing on what are the root causes of this waste? Where is it coming from? Is it mix? Is it sanitation, etc.? So then we peel back one further layer, and then we start to set more aggressive goals. One of the great things is there's a huge ROI on this financially, either on higher fulfillment or less inventory used in the warehouse. So now we are really looking at every indicator that creates hog feed. And the company that actually picks up the hog feed for us, they actually track the data. And they were actually coming in to find out what's going on because they're seeing a significant drop as we go forward. So that's just one example. And we now know we've got a lot more skinny pigs, which is wonderful because I'm now not feeding the hogs. The other one we focus on is pounds per man hour, overtime. All of our indicators in year one would have improved on average by 25%. Just every indicator by 25%.
Wow.
But by the end of 3 years, when we track it, I think we'll be closer to 30 to 35.
Wow.
Now, when you talk to individuals who work in the lean space and lean logistics, operational excellence transformation, they will tell you everything you measure, you can expect to reduce by 30%. So if you're a true believer, it's roughly 30%. And we're seeing that in all of our KPIs. We've obviously seen it in our EBITDA because it's a positive flow through. Our EBITDA is significantly higher percentage-wise than it was when we started. Our waste is down dramatically. Our inventory turns in the warehouse, material control, is down in the low 12s and 13s. So we're turning our inventory really, really fast. So instead of buying just in case, we truly are buying just in time. And that's this type of transformation. But one of the keys is giving very accurate, simple data analytics so we can track it. Some of the reports that we've developed on Power BI are just remarkable. I mean, our data analytics, we can see our overtime by leader, by time of day, by shift, by department. We can do the same with hog feed, by shift, by line, by department, by leader. So then we can actually drill in and actually have a chat with the leader, maybe on the night shift in one of the bakeries on the bun line, and say, what's the problem? What's the challenge? And we find out that the night shift has the least seniority of employee time in the business, because when we start new employees, we put them on nights. Well, now that leader trying to deal and work with the same expectations with less senior employees. So then we start to change that and put more seniority, and then all of a sudden you see the correlation. So a lot of sleeves up and data, but we're very, very pleased, and we're definitely ahead of schedule.
So, okay, well, first of all, it's very clear why New Water Capital brought you in.
Thank you.
To lead. You've got some pretty just excellent processes that you have in place that you're executing at a very high level. This season of Troubleshooting Innovation is sponsored by Bundy Baking Solutions. From pan design to product release, Bundy's got your bakery covered. American Pan boosts efficiency and sustainability with E-Pan designs, while Sonova and AccuSpray deliver precision with cutting-edge release agents and applicators. Check out Integra, Bundy Baking Solutions' newest oil blend for premium performance without the premium price. And don't miss the award-winning AccuSpray Pan Oiler for cleaner, more controlled oil application. Visit www.bundybakingsolutions.com to learn more. These kinds of things always fascinate me. I'm just always so fascinated by leaders who can keep a pulse on multiple teams across multiple locations and bring everybody together for executing on one goal. So what would you say are the key factors in maintaining that, especially when you commute via jet?
Yeah.
But via commercial jet to get, so like you have to take a flight to get to work for the week. What are the key factors in maintaining all of these excellent foundational and operational philosophies and processes that you have?
That's a really good question. I do sound like a jet setter, don't I? I've been asking for a private jet. They keep saying no, so we'll see. We'll see. So the first thing is be careful what you measure. A lot of companies go into KPI management and think, oh, we need to get 20 KPIs. Just don't overwhelm everyone. So really, I'm tracking between 5 and 7 KPIs. Maximum I would look at is 10. You're just going to get data overload. And generally, the top 5 have flown all the way through the business. So basically, what I look at is the same data the general manager looks at, which is the same data the production manager looks at, and the supervisor looks at. And we share that data. We have war rooms in every one of our bakeries where you basically go in and brainstorm and communicate. We still have our challenges. We still have, sometimes we go off the rail a little bit. We have to get back on track. But I share the story. I was teaching for the Lean Institute, and I went to Edmonton, Canada, to present. And I was the key speaker after lunch, which you never want that time slot. Everybody wants a nap. But I would just fly in, do my presentation, a little bit of networking, and then I'd leave. But I got there early, and I went and I actually listened to a key speaker before me. And this individual was incredible. I'm showing my age now, but I know in Texas there's a very famous oil fighter, Red Adair, and Red Adair would basically go in and put out oil wells that were in fire. Well, this individual who was presenting did similar, but for forest fires. So he was presenting, and I'm thinking, why is the guy presenting at the Lean Institute who puts out forest fires?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this has got to be fascinating. And what he was explaining was the principles of how you put out a forest fire. Basically, he was saying that 40% of the team are dropping powder on the fire. They've got the hoses. They're trying to put the fire out. He said, but the remaining highest percentage of the team get 5 to 10 miles ahead of the fire, and they get diggers and clear everything in its way. And if the wind direction doesn't change, they've actually starved the fire. So they'll keep fighting it, and then eventually it will reach an area where there's no food, and the fire will start to go out. So the key for me is getting 30% of the team, maybe 40%, holding the hose whilst we're doing all the transformation, and then get the 60% focus on corrective action. So eventually, those individuals will go out of the firefighting mode and get into a more professional, constant performing business. So I'm just trying to make sure there's a balance of frontline leadership, driving the business, and then a good percentage of the leadership by bakery, fixing the business. And then eventually the meat, and then we get a better quality of life. And I think that's been one of the big transformations is let's make sure we don't all pick up the hose. Let's make sure some of us get ahead of the fire and then actually put some processes in. And that was year 1. By now, year 2, again, we have our challenges, but year 2, we're a lot more focused on corrective action and root cause analysis and putting in process changes.
Awesome. Another thing I want to talk about that we haven't really touched on is equipment in the operation. So I was curious if there have been recent investments in equipment, and if so, how do you prioritize when you're considering a capital investment like equipment?
Yeah, our investment group's been incredible. The investment has been put in. We're over $20 million committed and in just in a very short period of time. We're actually, this year alone, we've got $16 million of capex on projects and equipment already committed to for 2025. Firstly, of course, is we always look at safety. So just if any of this equipment got a breach of safety, that's number one. The second is what we call uptime. What is the maintenance cost to keep some of this older equipment running? That's the bigger challenge. So we have a really good parts department across now all of the bakeries. We're holding the right inventory. We're tracking our parts. We're tracking our work orders as we start to get better preventative maintenance. And I tell the team that, if you go and visit Edinburgh in Scotland, the average home in Scotland and Edinburgh is 500 years old.
Wow.
So yes, when you walk in the door, they're not 500 years old. They've been modernized. So yes, we may have some older bakeries with some old equipment, but as long as we maintain it, then good preventative maintenance is key. So one of the first things we did is we increased the rate of pay for engineering, and we increased the amount of engineers by bakery. And the third was when I spoke about Project Smoke in an earlier episode, where we did SKU rationalization. That took pressure off the equipment to do larger runs, and it allows us now to hand over one full day by piece of equipment, whether that be buns or bread or donuts, to the engineering team. So now they've actually got 24 hours to do good preventative maintenance. And then when the shift walks in the next morning, it's running, it's operating, it's tested, and it's going. We are upgrading our proofers. We've already got on proofer number 2 right now. These are brand new proofers. And that proofer will be installed in September in one of the bakeries. We put one in our other bakery just towards the end of last year, put a full new cooling system in one of our bakeries. We're installing a second one in another bakery right now, which is going on. We're putting in a high-speed bun line upgrade into one of our flagship bakeries. That's going on. It'll be ready by the end of the first quarter next year. Our ovens are all being upgraded with new technology. So we're basically, again, just this year alone is 16 million. And that's one of the great things about New Water Capital. They realize that we have to invest. So yes, we've got some aging equipment that's being replaced, but we've also got some aging equipment that inside is being rebuilt. So that gives me a high level of confidence. We're seeing our maintenance spend coming down consistently, which is wonderful. As we invest in the equipment, we have less breakdowns, which then in turn gives us a higher customer fulfillment. Our fulfillment right now is sitting at 99%.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, our customer fulfillment is high.
It's very high. Okay, so many years ago, I asked a baker, like, when do you know when you can still repair a piece of equipment or it's time to replace? And this baker told me, when I have to start looking for parts on eBay, that's when I know I have to replace it. And I thought that was crazy. So it's one of my favorite questions to ask bakers, like, what is your sort of baseline for knowing when it's time to replace a piece of equipment versus update it or repair it?
Yeah, actually, I understand that answer. And I actually think it's quite amusing, but I can understand it because it's actually a very good answer. In one of my bakeries, I have an oven that is 40 years old. So the manufacturer is making new ovens, but trying to get some parts, I could see why, we go out to auctions and maybe buy an older piece of equipment just to get some parts from it. And it's the same way if you have a vintage car at home and you want to rebuild it, you have to go and buy vintage spares. So I understand the question, I understand the answer. There is a standard financial answer, which is when it's depreciated. What I can tell you I'll speak for Klosterman, but I have discussed and visited other bakeries that have the same challenge. A high percentage of our equipment is it's depreciated many, many, many years ago. Because this equipment, just if you take care of it, will run forever almost.
Yeah.
And the other part is it's very expensive equipment. A high-speed bun line from mixer, proofer, oven, conveyor system, packaging is somewhere close to $45 million for a high-speed bun line. That's a considerable investment to make high-speed buns. So you can understand why bakeries would say, well, can we go another year?
Right.
Can we go another year? And it's just how long's a piece of string, we just keep going. So we can rebuild 140 years in 3 years. So what we have to do is focus on oldest first, what's got the highest breakdowns, what is difficult to get parts, and what does new technology give us. So just 5 weeks ago, we put in a beautiful new mixer in one of our bakeries. And this mixer is, it's the size of a private jet. I mean, these things are huge. And we just had it come in from Canada. It was installed. And it's beautiful, but it's actually 30% more efficient than the old piece of equipment that was in its place. So that just gets to a point where you just have to do a replacement factor. But I would say to replace all of the equipment that is needed in these older bakeries is probably a 5-year journey to just continually upgrade and replace. So if we can keep the outside and just rebuild the main key components inside, which we're doing in one of the bakeries, we're completely refurbishing the oven, and outside will still be the old shell. But if I bought a brand new one, it would look the same outside, it'd just be shinier.
Right.
But inside, we're rebuilding the jets, we're putting in a higher gas pressure, we're putting in some new technology in the front end and the control panels. That is a refit and a rebuild, but it also gives another 10 years life. So that's a pretty wise investment versus spending 5 million on a new oven. So it's expensive, and it's an expensive industry on equipment. We've got a really nice replacement factor, but we also have a very good upgrade and rebuild factor as well over the next 5 years. We're continually investing in our equipment.
So we've talked about training before, but I'm curious, how does training on the line come into play in terms of what you expect from your equipment manufacturers? Like, once the equipment is installed and the line's up and running, are there expectations for training the workers who are going to be using that equipment?
100%. We've really upgraded our engineering team, and you'll hear some companies say maintenance. I actually see maintenance as a slightly different thing. Maintenance is making sure that, that when I put the light switch on, the light bulb's going to come on. I get the basic fundamentals, but then there is facility engineering, right? I was lucky enough to own a Ferrari. I wouldn't have a Fiat dealer work on it. I would have a qualified individual with that. I'm a bigger believer, though, of if you're going to pay and put in new equipment, consider paying the maintenance that comes with it. So we often will say we'll buy the mixer, but what I like to do is also buy the quarterly preventative maintenance program that can come with it. So yes, you pay a premium, but they'll actually come in once a quarter and they'll obviously keep that equipment serviced and maintained. So that's part of what we're doing as we do the replacements. And then the second is, as I said earlier, we've really upgraded the engineers. Probably every bakery is about 25 to 30% more associates in that area. And they're actually in the department, lockout, tag out, all the stuff you'd expect. But they're really getting much better at the preventative maintenance and the training. So when we put in new equipment, especially some of this larger equipment, there's normally about a 4 to 6 weeks installation phase. So our chief engineers have been taught by them at that time, so that when they leave, they can hand it over, and then we can obviously make sure that we continue with a good preventative maintenance.
Okay. All right. So, okay, I have one last question for you this week, Dale. When you go into the bakeries, when you are on the manufacturing floor, what are the top 3 things that you're focused on? So when the bakery workers know the boss is coming, they're like, we got to make sure that 1, 2, and 3 are in tip-top shape because we know that's what he's going to be focusing on.
Yeah. So the first is I will always walk the floor with the leadership, and generally right down to the supervisors. And we'll go and actually we say, let's go to C. Let's go see what's going on together. And when I walk around one of our bakeries, number one, clean, organized. Nothing stored in the hallways, nothing stored against the walls, nothing stored 6 foot above in case it falls and slips and falls. So just clean, clear, and organized. I'm looking at the sanitation. I'm looking at the safety. That's number one. Number 2 is we built podiums and workstations, and we moved everyone from the office to the floor. So every podium now, if you think of a podium, for me, when I think of a podium, I think of an orchestra and someone at the podium orchestrating what's going on. So we have supervisors at each podium, at each functional area. And that's the individual that our associates can go to if they need an answer. And if there's a morning briefing, which we have in the war rooms, and they leave, then they'll have a lead associate stand at the podium. It's always manned, always, so that we know there is leadership on the floor orchestrating the department. So I'm checking the podiums they're actually got someone stood at the podiums orchestrating their department. So that's the second one. And then the third one for me is I always get to the end of the line to check the quality of the product. I want to visually see what we're getting ready to ship meets the standard and the quality, and that's generally what I'm doing is when I go onto the floor. And then I will always have a fourth is I'll have a debrief with the senior leaders at the bakery level, just any challenges, anything you need from me, anything we can do better. I'll always have those discussions, and we'll then have a review on their KPIs and making sure that they're hitting their indicators. That's the typical journey for me as I go onto the floor. And I smile because we have a lot of our leadership who like to get covered in flour. So, you go out, everybody loves to be in the middle of it, but it's making sure they're also orchestrating, which is very important.
I love it. And that's really a very clear way that a bakery can achieve operational excellence. Like, that's a really good formula for anyone who is running a bakery at the plant level. Those are three really important things to make sure they're constantly and consistently thinking about. So I think that's a wonderful note to end on. You mentioned at the very beginning, foundationally, that culture is at the foundation for good manufacturing pillars. So next week, we're going to dive into culture, and it's another area that you're really well known for. So I'm very excited to dive into that with you next week. But Dale, thank you so much this week for your time and talking about operational excellence.
Thank you, Joanie. My pleasure. Look forward to speaking to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Troubleshooting Innovation, and a special thanks to this season's sponsor, Bundy Baking Solutions, setting the industry standard for baking pan design, performance, and service for more than 60 years. Learn more at www.bundybakingsolutions.com. Troubleshooting Innovation is an award-winning podcast from Commercial Baking. It's hosted by me, Joanie Spencer, Editor-in-Chief of Commercial Baking, and produced by Jordan Winter, Avant Food Media's Creative Director. For more information on topics and sponsorship, visit commercialbaking.com or email info@commercialbaking.com.